Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative. I'll be looking at The Fog by James Herbert. Now, James Herbert is a fantastic writer. I have quite a lot of his books, and honest to goodness, it is genuinely just every time, like when I read his books, they have an ability to just put me on edge. They're very supernatural based. Um, you've got the Ash trilogy, which I've got over there. You've got Rats, which is based about oh, it unsettled me. The Rats, based based about rats in sort of like that become bigger and bigger and bigger and basically invade the world. And considering that horrible fact about like how far away you are from a rat at any point, I don't even want to think about it. But then you've got the fog. Now the fog, it basically follows this fog. So this fog, a crack appears in the earth without any meaning, without any sort of like background. It just appears, and from it appears this fog. And this fog, if it passes over you or passes over your city or town or whatever, it drives people insane. It causes unspeakable horrors. It's basically just traveling, and you if you're in its path, that's it. You're done for. If you get infected by it, you're insane. And it's the fact that it just follows this fog as it's making its way across this country. And you can't fight a fog, can you? Realistically, like yeah, you can maybe get some really strong fans, but this fog is very very thick and very like I doubt a strong breeze would kind of blow it away. And it is so eerie, and honestly it had me a little bit sort of like on edge, being like, "Ooh," because what would happen if you woke up one morning and there was a fog outside your window and it seeped into the house? Because it doesn't just stay outside, it seeps in everywhere. You can't escape that. Like you can't fight it. Like with a lot of like the books and the horror and the thriller, the ones that get me is the supernatural elements, because it's very hard to fight supernatural elements, and you can't fight a fog, you can't punch it, you can't, like, you can try and run away from it, but it's the fact that it follows this, and it just goes through, and it just causes devastation wherever it goes, but like in a way where it's like it appears out of nowhere, and again, I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but the fact that it just goes over these villages and into these houses and into these people's minds, and once it's passed, what's left is nothing. And it was so brilliantly written, like honestly, so brilliantly. Like I have reread it several times, and I honestly, I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is a really good idea, because there is something, as again, I know I mentioned Stephen King last week with Swan Song on the Stand, and obviously you've got The Fog with James Herbert, and it's something very similar with The Mist. But in The Mist, in Stephen King's, there are creatures in the mist. So the mist comes, but there are creatures that live in the mist, and that's what's killing you. It's not the mist, it's the creatures in the mist. Whereas this, it is literally just fog. And I think that's what got me, is the fact that as I was reading it, I was like, how, like, because obviously people try and fight it, they try and get away with it, but it's like, how do you do it? Like, if you're in its path, like, there's nothing you can do, and it is terrifying, and it is a good terrifying though, because I very much doubt that we're going to end up with a crack in the earth and then starting in a village in Wiltshire. I doubt that we're going to end up with a crack in the earth and then fog starts from Wiltshire and moves its way across the country. I doubt that, but it is so good because it plays on you, and it gets you thinking about it even after the book is finished. And this is what I love about, like, I love supernatural, I love horror, I love thrillers, I love Stephen King, and I love James Herbert. Give James Herbert a read. Just even if you don't start with The Fog, start with another James Herbert book. Maybe not Rats if you're scared of rats. That's not a good book to read if you're scared of rats. But the ideas that they come up with, the way that the way that they write it down, it gets you thinking, and you're constantly thinking, and that's the sign of a good book. And so when I finished reading this book, I was still thinking about it. Like, I genuinely went away and went, oh my goodness, like, could you imagine? And I genuinely was still going, oh my god. And that is why I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Now, it gets a 4 out of 5 from me. It probably would have got higher, but I think sometimes I can't say why it gets 4 out of 5 because I can't give away sort of like the ending. But yeah, so it gets 4 out of 5 from me. But if you read any James Herbert, please leave them below in the comments because, as I said, I love him as an author. And subscribe to be alerted to any new videos. Thank you so much for your continued support, and remember to always keep it contento.